Hello my friends, I'm Duchess and welcome to my YouTube channel. Before we get started on anything today, I just wanted to say thank you so much for 100 subscribers. I'm so very thankful for all of you. Today, I will be giving you guys 4 tips on how to color your webtoon more efficiently. Let's get started. Disclaimer, I'm not a professional artist or webtoon creator, but here are my tips that I think might be helpful to you. Within this past year of making my webtoon, I have discovered and learned new things, so hopefully you'll learn something new from this video. Tip number 1, use the reference tool for backgrounds. I find using this very efficient and it makes the coloring process easier for me. So let's use these panels here. I'm done with the inking or the line art, so now I need to get coloring. My panel borders, which are these box shapes with the drawings in them, and my speech bubbles are both on separate layers because I don't like it when they overlap on the same layer. It used to get really messy, so I always have a separate layer for each. In order to color the background quickly, I duplicate both of these layers and combine them. I labeled the combined layer Ref, which stands for reference. Then I click on the Ref layer and many wonderful options appear on the left side of it. Towards the bottom, there's the option that says reference, so I click that one. After I click on it, I can see that the ref layer has the word reference right underneath it in slightly smaller font. I always have to make sure and check to make sure that I'm using the reference tool on the correct layer. Now, create a layer for coloring the background. I label my background and move it below all of my line art layers. Now it's time for color drop. Color drop is when you select a color and you drag it from the top right and onto your drawing. So I'm going to choose a peachy color for the background and just drop it into the boxes to fill in my panel backgrounds. I don't know about you guys, but I personally think it's better to color the backgrounds before coloring in the characters. That way you can make sure that the characters and the backgrounds match. If you color the characters first, then you might have trouble finding a background color that goes well with the characters. Now the background is done. Tip number 2, use the selection tool. Instead of coloring in every single space on this huge and long canvas, I highly recommend tracing your drawings to color drop instead. You can use color drop if you have really neat line art, but I wouldn't recommend using color drop directly on your line art, or you could trace the object that you want to color and then use color drop to color in the rest of it. The selection tool also uses color drop, but I feel like it's so much more efficient and it's super easy to utilize after some practice. Click the third button on the top left. It looks more like an S shape and this is the selection tool. I always use the freehand option because that means I can move my pencil around any way I want and I can select very specific things, like I can create any shape that I want because it's freehand. The other options kind of have their own shapes, like the rectangle, the ellipse, so it selects a specific area that, Make sure that it is set to color fill, which is towards the bottom left of the screen. This will use color drop for the selected area. I'm currently outlining a character on the coloring layer, which is dedicated to only coloring my characters. After I have outlined my character with the selection tool, there's this little gray bubble at the top that shows up, so I press on that. This automatically fills in the selected area with the color that I was using, and I do this for all of my characters. Tip number 3, use Alpha Lock. Now, I just color all the clothes, the shoes, and accessories on one layer. I already have all of my characters filled in with the colors that I want, so now I use Alpha Lock by clicking on the color layer and selecting Alpha Lock, which is one of the options. Alpha Lock allows you to only be able to mark up what is already existent on the layer that is currently active. So you see, wherever I've moved my pencil, it only shows up in the characters' bodies that I have outlined and colored in, and it doesn't go outside of those lines. This is helpful because now I can color messily without it being messy. I usually always use the selection tool when I'm coloring just because I feel like it's easier than coloring it in by hand or tracing it with the color. Another good thing about using all these tools is that you can change the colors easily without messing it up. I can change the color of the clothes or the skin like this because there are clear boundaries. Last but not least, tip number 4, use as few layers as possible. I know it can be hard to limit the amount of layers that you're using, but I found this very helpful. I used to use about 50 layers per canvas and I found it extremely difficult to color. Now I only use about 30 layers, but most of them are the words that I type for the speech bubbles. I only have 4 coloring layers and the rest are for shading or texts. 1 layer is for the background, 1 is for the characters, 1 is for the hair, and 1 is for their eyes. I think it makes sense to have the background and the characters on their own layers. For the hair and the eyes, I have quite a few effects that I use because that's just my art style. So I keep them on their separate layers. However, I'm very organized about it and I always know where I colored things and where to find them because everything is put on their own layer or on the same layers. So I know it can't be anywhere else. If you color on too many layers, it can be hard to find what you're looking for, even if you label your layers. When I first started, I used at least 10 layers for coloring because I colored most things on its own layer, and I would label it, but there was just so many things that when it was time to shade, I got lost and spent so much time hunting down layers and trying to figure out where I colored my character's shoes or their jewelry or their irises and everything. Alright, so those are my 4 tips that I wanted to give you guys on how to color your webtoon more efficiently. These are 4 very helpful tips that have helped me to increase my webtoon creating pace by a lot. I think it used to take me like 2-3 months to make like 1 episode, probably more than that. But now it only takes me about a month because the coloring process is so much faster, and I feel like it's really important to know how to make your webtoon creating process more efficient. That is all I have for you guys this week. If you enjoyed this week's video or learned something new, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get notified. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next week.